Rob Sadowski, last week you announced the introduction of Cohesity Maestro. Now, one of the things about that, I mean, in the jargon, it says that it integrates natively with other AI platforms. What does that mean?
Yeah. So what we see happening in the industry is that many organizations, whether it's your IT analytics organization, whether it's your software development organization, and whether it's your IT operations organization or your security organization, increasingly what they're doing is they're using AI tools, agents like Anthropic Claude, Google Gemini, ChatGPT, and they're building customized applications built around their own workflows, building dashboards that visualize the stats and figures and configurations that are only important to them. And so this new kind of mode of working, which organizations are doing to help them be more productive, be more personalized, achieve better results, we want to embrace that from a data protection and data security perspective. And so that's really what Cohesity Maestro is about. It's allowing them to use the AI tooling of their choice, the agent platform of their choice, but still access all of the power of our Cohesity Data Cloud to get their jobs done, whether that's a security task, whether that's a data resilience task, to work the way that they want to work the most. That's the ultimate goal.
I mean, and if you think about it, it's very intelligent, isn't it? You have people all of the time saying, oh yeah, I always use Apple, Apple is the best thing going, and other people swear by Android or they swear by this. So if they're used to working with a particular platform and they feel that that is good for their productivity, essentially you're recognizing that.
That's right. Again, it goes back to letting them work the way they want to work. And we've developed quite a bit of technology and features in our user interface, for Cohesity Data Cloud. It's very rich. It includes AI assistants. It includes AI agents. But some organizations, and many organizations increasingly are doing this more and more and more, they're working not only with the tools in the products, but those AI agents outside. And so again, whether they choose to work completely within our platform, whether they want to mix, or whether they want to work completely with that new, agentic platform, we want to support them because ultimately we're helping them get to the best outcomes possible. And that's almost always going to be with the tools, most effectively with the tools that they really choose to use.
Okay, now let's go into a bit of jargon here. I mean, one of the things that I always criticize the technology industry for is a reliance on three-letter acronyms like TLAs. And there's this one called MCP, and it's incredibly important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so MCP is really the standardized interface that most platforms have adopted to allow agents to interact with that platform, exchange data, issue commands, get information back, and so forth. And so really it helps us standardize and work with multiple platforms without having to build unique bespoke integrations for those platforms. It's really makes it easier for us to do what we want to do to allow us to work with these things. That's all.
And so again, that's the recognition, isn't it? You're recognizing that that's an essential thing to do, and that's the way to actually achieve it.
Absolutely. I mean, Cohesity has always been focused on an open approach, whether it's opening up APIs in our product, whether it's supporting standards for example, exchange of encryption keys, whether it's supporting many of the regulatory standards that are out there. We have always, and just building an ecosystem of partners where we integrate products. And so we've always been very, very aware of working within the ecosystem of products that our customers use, again, to help them be more productive, to fit in, to allow them to not only leverage their existing investment, but increase their capability through integrations with our platform.
Okay, now this isn't jargon, it does sound a bit weird. Headless. What is headless?
Right. So headless is a term that others in the industry have coined around the idea that most of the interaction with an application or a platform will be done by agents through these programmatic ways and not through a user interface. So if you think of the user interface as being the face or being the head, it's a headless. In other words, I'm not interacting with the main user interface of the product. I'm interacting through another means, in this case, some of the standards that we talked about.
And that apparently stops rogue AIs. How does it do that? Is it just because it hasn't got a head?
Well, I think that one of the most important parts of this is that all of the actions that go through that interface are governed. So there are security features, there are authentication, there is authorization. We do that based on roles, and so it's not like any agent can go and call the system and achieve anything you want. It depends on the entitlements, and again, the fact that it is both authenticated and authorized to perform and interact in the way that it does.
Okay, and while the MCP standard provides a point of integration, is there a greater need now for something similar?
I think that the most important thing to think of is that organizations are trying to achieve better resilience outcomes. So whether that comes through using an agent to help them, whether that agent is inside the platform or outside the platform, whether they prefer to interact through their own the interface that we give them in the product, or whether they want to do it through an interface that they're controlling a little bit more in programming. At the end of the day, what matters most is that they were able to operate the most effectively. They're able to support the program in which they're operating, and they can achieve those better resilience outcomes. And that's what we want to do at the end of the day.
So in a sense, is this Cohesity just actually proving that it really is a 21st century company? I mean, look at most of the internet. Most of the internet's built on open source. You're recognizing that, aren't you?
Yeah. I think that we always want to embrace, the new options, the new paradigms, the new, again, it's meeting the users where they are and adhering to the standards that are out there to help us do that. And again, ultimately, we want to help organizations achieve what they're trying to do, which is to protect their business, to manage risk, to be more secure, and keep their business running.
And yet there's another factor here too, isn't there? Because the great advantages of this AI age, this intelligence age, are going to be from different ways of thinking about how you can exploit data, different ways that you can actually come up with, say, looking at data as a product can be recombined, and that you can actually get some value out of your data that you didn't see before.
That's right. And I think that part of offering these types of interfaces and integrating with more products and capabilities that they have, it really unlocks that creativity. We know that we can create great, rich user experiences. We've been doing this, for decades, honestly, in our products. But on the other hand, to be able to harness the creativity of our entire user base, who may want to do something a little bit differently, who may have a great idea that they can incorporate faster than us by doing this, that they have a particular way that they want to work with other organizations, other parts of their organization. We want to unlock that creativity that's in the end user base, again, to achieve what they want to and get to those better outcomes. And that's really where we're going.
Okay, now, resilience, it's a term that Cohesity is very, very keen on.
Yes.
Where's the resilience in all of this?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, the most important thing about resilience is being able to get your organization back up and running with a minimum amount, if any, disruption when an adverse event hits. And if we can create functionality that is more customized to an organization, that has a range of capabilities that allows them to coordinate across their tech stack, across their departments, across their people, to get to those outcomes more efficiently, faster, in the ways that they want to work, that's ultimately going to increase their resilience. And that's what I'm talking about getting to the outcomes that they want.
So I'm getting the real impression here that really what you're trying to do is actually put the security into an engine for the future.
I think security, it's a long-held belief and statement in the industry. Security needs to be built in and not bolted on. And that's, how the concept of cyber resilience has evolved. First, we were just thinking about data protection, backup and recovery. But as we think of the types of events that organizations are trying to protect themselves against, to trying to insulate the business from, increasingly that's cyber events, cyber attacks, ransomware, other types of cyber attacks. And so these things are all coming together. Therefore, the capabilities to manage and mitigate risk around those areas have to come together and be integrated to get to that outcome of getting the business back on its feet as quickly as possible. And that's the end goal of resilience. If you're great at resilience, it means that your business is always going to function with no or the minimum amount of disruption, no matter what the threats, no matter what the risks come at you are. That you have the confidence that you can face those risks and operate without interruption. That's what they're looking for.
It's interesting, isn't it? You're almost giving a different definition to this term resilience. Resilience previously, it's been thought of as this very sort of, yes, we'll bounce back. But you're actually making data a bit more flexible and yet at the same time more secure. And that's what you're getting at with resilience, isn't it?
It really is. That the notion of what it takes to be resilient in the industry has changed. And again, it's the nature of the type of risks that organizations face. It's making them more adaptable. Again, giving them more confidence in the face of these risks that they can indeed handle that. There's a new set of capabilities that are required. And again, coming back to things like Maestro, if we can make those capabilities easier to access, more effective, more efficient, that is great benefit.
One of the reasons that you have to do this is because of the regulatory changes that are becoming going to come down the line, because there are going to be different demands. I mean, data sovereignty is one word that a lot of people have been talking about. Well, it's not necessarily data sovereignty, is it? It's knowing where your data is and where it should be. And there's also another demand too for wanting to have your data located pretty close to you, because that way you can get more out of it.
Yeah. It all depends on the business requirement. And some businesses are going to be heavily regulated. They're going to have very strict requirements. If you're an element of critical infrastructure, if you're in the financial system, there are requirements that say, you must be able to recover, you must be able to withstand, certain types of malicious events. You have to be able to prove that you can indeed do that. So, as you mentioned, sovereignty is a different dimension. How can I make sure that I truly have control and independent operation of my technology and my data footprint? And that can get into things like data location, data control, how we can make sure that actually happens. And so again, it's understanding the overall risk landscape that we're facing and adjusting the capabilities we have to protect, secure, govern that data, that really underpin so much of what we do. And that's why you see these mandates, these regulatory mandates, these sovereignty mandates, these others, because they recognize the importance of data and technology more broadly to the economy and really the whole world that we live in. And that's, comes back at the end of the day of why resilience is so important, because of these dependencies that we have.
Right, and just one thing, recovery. Where's recovery in this?
So I think that recovery is one part of a comprehensive resilience strategy. We talk about 5 stages of cyber resilience that's mapped to very common security and risk management frameworks. And typically, they talk about response and recovery that complements things like protection and prevention. Now, what we have seen historically is that so much of the focus, especially in cybersecurity, has been more on the protection and prevention side. And as the risks continue to increase, there needs to be much more attention and focus and budget and people around that response and recovery part. Now, recovery doesn't happen in isolation. It's a complement to everything we do as part of that security program. But I think that given the absolute criticality and some of the dangerousness of the threats that we face, a greater focus has to be placed and weight has to be placed on recovery as programs continue to evolve to get that overall resilience level and posture that we're looking for.
I mean, it's interesting you use the word evolve. I've been writing about technology on and off for over 35 years now. And one of the things that has struck me is that when it started, people didn't really seem to understand data. Now that understanding is being forced upon people because they want to use AI. They didn't want to make that critical thinking before, to use a misused phrase.
Well, I think that what they are recognizing is that data is driving so much of the innovation in their business. And data is really the fuel for AI. You use it to train models. You use it as the input to models. You see that the AI systems and models generate new data for us. And so the critical importance of data, again, to operating the business or innovation today is so important. So if they can't protect that data, if they aren't confident they can manage the risk around that data, it puts really the core of the business, the core of their innovation strategy at risk. And so the ability to manage that data, to secure that data, to govern that data, to be resilient, is really existential for their business today. They've recognized that. And so, and by the same token, they know if they can manage that risk effectively, they can fully harness the power of these new AI systems and capabilities that are being brought to bear. But if they can't, they're building on a very risky and flawed foundation that may cause issues in the future.
And there's another really fascinating point about this I've begun to notice, which is that you can see companies that might think that they have a core function at the moment who will suddenly become innovative with the data and actually evolve into a completely different company if they're using this system properly.
I think it's such an important point. As people recognize the value of data in different contexts, they start to see different opportunities. And part of what's so important there is actually access to all of the data they may have in their organization. There may be data that they may think of as dark data that they haven't been able to analyze, that they can't bring to AI systems. And now that we give them capabilities to do that, for example, in Cohesity, we have capabilities around Cohesity Gaia that allows them to take that unstructured data and analyze it and interface with some of these AI systems to get even more insight about it. So being able to unlock the data that you have in your organization that you haven't been able to use, haven't been able to analyze, and now AI is almost supercharging that. It allows them many other opportunities, again, as you point out, that they may not have even thought of. But if they don't have that safe, secure, governed foundation, again, they're building on some very shaky ground. And so it's always critical to make sure that they have that well-governed and managed foundation.
And that's going to be core to doing business in the 21st century, isn't it? We interviewed Ott Velsberg, the data architect for the Estonian government. The Estonians thought, hang on, we don't have very much in terms of raw materials. What we will do is we will actually harness the data and give those opportunities for people to learn. That's the future.
Yeah, I think that it's a perfect example of the type of thinking where that's evolving, and technology is helping. Again, you may not realize the value of data until you're actually able to bring it all together, to connect different data sources, to make those connections, to make it available for analysis, to open it up to AI. You may see see incredible value that you hadn't realized before. And so it's creating a wealth of opportunities, and it's the progressive thinkers like them and others across public sector and private sector in industry that are doing this and making these breakthroughs because, again, they can manage that data, they make it available, and they're confident that it can be protected, because I think that's a really important point, especially if you're a part of a government or dealing with other types of sensitive information. There may be tremendous insights that you can gain from that, but preserving the security and privacy and risk against unauthorized disclosure of that data is absolutely paramount, and you don't even want to begin thinking about that unless you are confident in your ability to protect and secure and keep that data safe.
Which was the point that Velsberg made. He said that they got buy-in from the population by proving that they could protect the data. That way they got the trust, and as they pointed out to the population, we can make things now much, much more efficient for you because we can understand the data.
Yeah, I think that trust is a very important concept, and as you say, it comes from being able to prove. Back to data resilience, it's one thing to be able to say, I have the right tooling in place, I have the right capabilities in place, I'm backing up all my data, but to actually do and rehearse a recovery and test a recovery and prove it is another thing. And this is what we are seeing from the regulatory side of the world. Is it's not only it's trust but verify. Trusting comes from your ability to prove that you've actually done these recoveries, that you can actually meet the objectives that you said, that you actually have protected the data that you said, and you can bring it back and recover it in the time that you've committed. And so trust is just such a fundamental concept in resilience and in these conversations at large.
One of the things that people have been saying with AI, and indeed we were looking at a survey of this by unions in the UK last week, they said that 50% of workers were scared that they were going to lose their jobs to AI. That's this big issue, isn't it? Surely people will just get an AI and they will replace everything. They won't need anything else. Well,
I think it's much more important to think about AI as a bit of a force multiplier rather than it as a replacement. We've had software for quite some time. The focus of almost every piece of software at some level is automation. So are we automating things? Yes, we absolutely are. Does that mean you're taking humans out of a process? Absolutely not. One of the things that people have talked about is that, well, maybe AI is going to replace programming or replace coders. What we've seen in our organization is that it makes our existing coders, especially the best coders, incredibly more productive. They can get their ideas actualized or realized much more quickly. And so I think that there is, as more people experience the technology, they will start to see the benefits significantly outweigh. And I think the organizations who are only thinking and using AI to replace, human capability are really missing a tremendous opportunity instead to leverage the expertise of those humans that they've built and use AI to extend their reach, their capability, and so forth. And this is just, this is one of those reasons why we've committed to this architecture. The idea that we can tap into the creativity, the ingenuity, the way that our administrators and people who interact with our software want to work. They may have, some very innovative ideas and capabilities that we may never have thought of. And so I definitely think of it more as a capability that enhances and helps operators much more than it's going to replace operators at any scale.
I mean, in a sense, what you're saying is that you're aiding augmentation of the best and those people who can be creative.
Absolutely. That's, again, harnessing human creativity rather than replacing humans is the goal.